In 2021, millions of people across America and far beyond became invested in the life of a 22-year-old woman named Gabby Petito. On the surface, her story seemed like a dream, a young couple setting out on a cross-country journey, documenting their travels in a modest van, chasing adventure, and curating moments of joy for the world to see online. It was the picture of freedom, of youth, of a generation searching for meaning not in possessions, but in experiences. But as the days unfolded, cracks began to appear. What started as an enchanting road trip across America's breathtaking national parks slowly transformed into one of the most closely followed true crime cases of the decade. Social media updates turned into urgent pleas, and beautiful landscapes became the backdrop of something darker, a disappearance, a frantic search, and ultimately the discovery of a life cut short. The case of Gabby Petito is not only about a crime. It is about how quickly dreams can unravel, how relationships can carry both tenderness and danger, and how modern technology has changed the way we witness tragedy. For weeks, the nation followed updates in real time, from TikTok sleuths combing through clues, to live streams outside police stations, to candlelight vigils held in small towns thousands of miles away. Strangers who never knew Gabby spoke her name with familiarity, hoping for good news that never came. At the center of this case are two young people. Gabby, described by those who loved her as warm, creative, and full of light. And Brian Laundrie, her fiancé, who would go from companion to suspect, and eventually to a figure shrouded in silence. Theirs was a relationship that seemed, at least online, like the embodiment of adventure. But behind the carefully crafted posts and smiling videos, there were struggles, tensions that friends, witnesses, and even strangers would later recall. What makes Gabby's story so haunting is that she could be anyone's daughter, sister, or friend. She was pursuing her passion, eager to build a life she imagined for herself, and doing so with someone she believed she loved. That is why her disappearance, and later the confirmation of her death, resonated so widely. It is also why the unanswered questions about how events spiraled so quickly, about who knew what and when, and about the choices made by law enforcement, family members, and Brian himself, continue to fuel debate. This is not a story told for shock. It is a story told to remember a life, to understand the circumstances, and to reflect on the broader lessons it offers about relationships, safety, and the power of collective attention. The journey of Gabby Petito began as a dream and ended in heartbreak, a cautionary tale that continues to echo long after the van was parked and the cameras stopped rolling. Gabrielle Venora Petito, known to her family and friends simply as Gabby, was born on March 19, 1999 in Blue Point, New York. She was the eldest of 6 siblings and half-siblings, a role that came naturally to her. Those who knew her best often described her as warm, nurturing, and endlessly creative. Gabby was the kind of person who carried light into every room she entered, always smiling, always curious, and always eager to connect with others. From a young age, she demonstrated both compassion and courage. At just 14 years old, she appeared in a music video with her stepbrothers, raising awareness about gun violence in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy. That act of solidarity reflected something essential about Gabby, her desire to be part of causes larger than herself, and her instinct to give a voice to those who could not always speak for themselves. As she grew older, her passions took shape in art, photography, yoga, and travel. Friends recall her carrying a sketchbook, documenting moments not just with a camera, but with drawings and words. She had a way of finding beauty in the ordinary. A flower by the side of the road, a mural on a city wall, or the vast silence of a national park. After graduating from Bayport Blue Point High School in 2017, Gabby began charting her own path. She worked as a pharmacy technician and later at a Taco Bell, often picking up long hours to save money for the life she envisioned. That life, she dreamed, would be one filled with exploration. Her social media profiles reflected this vision. Colorful posts tagged with phrases like, "traveling the world in our tiny van," and the hashtag van life. It wasn't just an aesthetic for Gabby, it was a calling. She wanted to tell stories through travel blogs and YouTube videos, to share her experiences with others and inspire them to follow their own sense of adventure. Her online persona mirrored her true self, kind, hopeful, and full of wanderlust. Friends often said Gabby had an old soul, someone who longed for meaning in experiences more than in material things. Gabby Petito was not simply a victim of a crime. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a young woman with aspirations. Her life reminds us that behind every headline is a human being, with dreams, laughter, and love, whose story deserves to be remembered with care. Gabby Petito first met Brian Laundrie in high school at Bayport Blue Point in Long Island, New York. At first, theirs seemed like a classic young romance. After they reconnected in 2019, Gabby began dating Brian more seriously, and within a short time, their relationship deepened. Gabby eventually moved to Northport, Florida, to live with Brian and his parents, where the two started building a shared life. They worked side by side at a local Publix supermarket, Gabby as a pharmacy technician, and Brian in the grocery department. Later, as the COVID-19 pandemic reshaped daily life, both left their jobs, redirecting their attention toward a shared dream: traveling the country in a van. Gabby purchased a 2012 Ford Transit Connect, and together, they refurbished it into a camper, imagining months on the open road and the freedom of a nomadic lifestyle. The couple's engagement followed soon after, in July 2020. Friends recall the excitement in Gabby's voice when she described her plans. She envisioned documenting their adventures through YouTube and Instagram, creating van life videos that could inspire others to seek simplicity and adventure. Her social media presence reflected optimism and joy, images of the couple smiling in the desert sun, walking hand in hand through mountain trails, and sharing quiet moments by campfires. But beneath the surface, there were troubling dynamics. Friends later recalled Brian's controlling tendencies, from taking Gabby's identification to discourage her from seeing friends, to periods of moodiness that made her feel she needed to apologize for her own ambitions. A close friend, Rose Davis, described Brian as both protective and manipulative, someone who could charm Gabby one moment and undermine her confidence the next. Despite this, Gabby remained hopeful about their relationship and their shared journey. To her, the van was not just a vehicle, but a symbol of independence and creativity. She dreamed of transforming their travels into a lifestyle, with Brian at her side. It was this mixture of love, ambition, and underlying tension that set the stage for their cross-country trip in the summer of 2021. For Gabby, the road ahead seemed full of promise. For Brian, as some later suspected, the journey may have carried a far different meaning. As Gabby and Brian's trip unfolded in the summer of 2021, their social media updates painted a picture of carefree adventure. National parks, desert vistas, and smiling photos suggested nothing but happiness. But behind these images, moments of tension were surfacing, moments that, in hindsight, revealed troubling signs. On August 12, 2021, a 911 caller reported a disturbing scene in Moab, Utah. The caller described a man striking a young woman near the Moonflower Community Cooperative. That couple, police later confirmed, was Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. When officers located their van near Arches National Park, they found Gabby visibly upset and sobbing. Body camera footage captured her describing her struggles with stress and obsessive tendencies, apologizing for being mean and trying to shoulder the blame for the conflict. Officers noted scratches on her face and arm, while Brian appeared calm and somewhat detached. Gabby admitted Brian had grabbed her face during the altercation, but also insisted she did not want to be separated from him. Officers ultimately classified the situation as a mental health crisis, rather than domestic violence. Brian was put up in a local motel for the night, and Gabby stayed in the van. No charges were filed. In the days that followed, there were more signs of strain. On August 17th, Brian unexpectedly flew back to Florida, leaving Gabby alone for several days in Utah. He later rejoined her with his family's attorney claiming he returned to close a storage unit, but the trip raised questions. Why leave Gabby alone in the middle of a cross-country journey? On August 25th, Gabby made her final Instagram post, posing in front of a butterfly mural in Ogden, Utah. The next day, she spoke with her mother, Nicole Schmidt, for the last time. By August 27th, witnesses saw Gabby and Brian at a restaurant in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Reports described Brian as angry and aggressive with staff, while Gabby returned in tears to apologize. That same day, an unsettling text was sent from Gabby's phone. "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." Her mother immediately knew something was wrong. Gabby never referred to her grandfather by his first name. The final confirmed sighting of Gabby was that afternoon at a Whole Foods in Jackson, caught on security footage. Sometime between August 27th and August 30th, Gabby Petito's life came to a tragic end in the remote wilderness of Wyoming. The van that once symbolized freedom and exploration was now parked near a hidden grave, and Brian Laundrie began the journey back home, alone. When Gabby Petito's family stopped hearing from her at the end of August 2021, their concern quickly turned into alarm. Her final calls and texts had been unusual, even unsettling, and by September 1st, Brian Laundrie had returned to his parents' home in Northport, Florida, driving Gabby's van, but without Gabby. He offered no explanation to her family and made no attempt to contact them. On September 11th, Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, filed a missing person report with the Suffolk County Police Department in New York. That single action launched a sprawling investigation that would stretch across the country. Very quickly, attention turned toward Brian. He was the last person seen with Gabby. He had returned home in her vehicle, and he refused to speak to authorities. Police named Brian a person of interest, but he was not immediately charged with any crime related to Gabby's disappearance. Instead, federal authorities later obtained an arrest warrant for unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card, which he had allegedly used to withdraw money after her death. Meanwhile, Brian's parents retained an attorney and refused to answer questions from investigators. Their silence, paired with Brian's refusal to cooperate, only deepened public suspicion. The search for Gabby became one of the most highly publicized missing person cases in recent memory. Social media users dissected every detail of her Instagram posts, her YouTube van life videos, and the body cam footage from the Moab traffic stop. What began as a disappearance had grown into a homicide investigation, and then into a dual tragedy. The loss of Gabby had shaken the nation, but the sudden absence of Brian closed off the possibility of justice in the traditional sense. The case had shifted from one of searching for answers to one of piecing together fragments left behind, fragments that could only suggest what truly happened in those final days in Wyoming. When investigators examined Brian Laundrie's notebook, found alongside his remains, they uncovered what appeared to be his final account of Gabby's death. In it, he admitted responsibility, claiming that Gabby had fallen, sustained severe injuries, and begged him to end her suffering. He described his actions as merciful, writing that he ended her life out of love. He also explained his decision to end his own life, stating that he could not imagine living without her. But investigators and experts were quick to note that this account did not align with the medical evidence. Gabby's autopsy determined her death was caused by blunt force trauma and manual strangulation, injuries inconsistent with an accidental fall. Many viewed Brian's explanation as a way of avoiding accountability, a final attempt to frame the narrative on his own terms. Beyond the notebook, questions about Brian's state of mind and potential planning linger. Witness accounts suggest he was increasingly volatile during the trip, with several incidents of anger and aggression. Friends later described him as controlling, sometimes manipulative, and prone to jealousy. Gabby herself had confided in her mother that she felt overwhelmed at times, even expressing interest in traveling solo. Financial records added another layer of suspicion. In the days after Gabby's death, Brian used her debit card to withdraw more than $1,000, transactions that later led to a federal arrest warrant. Text messages sent from Gabby's phone to her mother also appeared to be written by someone else, raising the possibility that Brian attempted to create an alibi or delay suspicion while he made his way home. Meanwhile, Brian's parents faced scrutiny for their silence. Prosecutors and Gabby's family questioned whether they knew more than they admitted. While they have consistently denied wrongdoing, lawsuits later accused them of withholding critical information and failing to help in the search for Gabby. One particularly disturbing detail emerged in court: a letter written by Brian's mother, Roberta, which included statements such as, "If you need to dispose of a body, I will bring a shovel and garbage bags." Though she later said it was written before the events unfolded, its contents cast a troubling shadow over the family's role. Ultimately, no single motive could be definitively proven. What is clear is that Brian took steps, through misleading texts, financial withdrawals, and silence, to conceal the truth of what had happened. Whether motivated by fear, control, or desperation, his actions after Gabby's death paint a picture of someone more concerned with self-preservation than accountability. For Gabby Petito's family, the weeks between her disappearance and the discovery of her remains were filled with dread, confusion, and hope that slowly gave way to despair. When the news finally came on September 19, 2021, that Gabby's body had been found in Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest, her loved ones were shattered. Her stepfather, Jim Schmidt, who had traveled west to assist in the search, recalled collapsing to the ground when he heard the confirmation. He then faced the unimaginable task of calling Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, and her father, Joe Petito, to tell them their daughter was gone. For the family, the pain was overwhelming, magnified by the distance and the suddenness with which their lives had been changed. Friends and relatives described Gabby as a bright light in their lives, someone who loved deeply and gave generously. Losing her meant losing not only a daughter or a sister, but the future she had been building, a life of adventure, creativity, and connection. Candlelight vigils were held in her hometown of Blue Point, New York, where hundreds gathered to honor her memory. Across the nation, strangers who had followed her story online mourned alongside them, leaving flowers, cards, and messages of support. The family also faced a public spotlight that was both comforting and overwhelming. While many rallied to support them, others speculated, criticized, or spread misinformation online. Amid this noise, Gabby's parents worked to channel their grief into advocacy. They established the Gabby Petito Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping families of missing persons and supporting survivors of domestic violence. Their message was clear: if Gabby's story could draw so much attention, they wanted to use that visibility to shine a light on others whose cases often go unnoticed. Emotions also ran high in response to the Laundrie family's silence. Gabby's parents expressed deep hurt that Brian's parents had refused to speak with them, even as their daughter was missing. Lawsuits later accused the Laundries of knowing more than they admitted, and of choosing to protect their son rather than help save Gabby. For her grieving family, that silence felt like an additional cruelty layered on top of their loss. In interviews, Gabby's father Joe spoke of his daughter's impact. She touched the world. Her mother echoed the sentiment, reminding people that Gabby was more than a headline. She was a young woman whose kindness, laughter, and spirit deserved to be remembered. Their grief was profound, but so too was their determination to make sure Gabby's life, and not just her death, would have lasting meaning. Today, the story of Gabby Petito remains a touchstone in modern true crime, a case that is as much about unanswered questions as it is about what is known. While investigators ultimately determined that Brian Laundrie killed Gabby, the absence of a trial and his own death by suicide left many aspects unresolved. Instead of courtroom testimony, the public was left with fragments: his notebook admission, witness accounts, digital evidence, and the aching silence of what could never be fully explained. In the aftermath, Gabby's family pursued justice through civil action. They filed lawsuits against the Laundrie family, accusing them of withholding crucial information during the search. A wrongful death claim against Brian's estate resulted in a $3 million settlement, though the family acknowledged little would likely be recovered due to his lack of assets. They also brought a case against the Moab Police Department, alleging negligence in its handling of the August 12th domestic disturbance. That case was dismissed under Utah's Governmental Immunity Act, but the family has appealed to the state's Supreme Court, hoping for accountability and systemic change. The broader cultural impact of Gabby's case has also been significant. Media outlets and commentators pointed to the disproportionate attention her disappearance received compared to countless other missing persons, particularly Indigenous women and women of color, whose cases often go unreported. The term "missing white woman syndrome" became part of the national conversation, highlighting disparities in media coverage and law enforcement response. Gabby's family, while initially uncomfortable with the term, embraced the opportunity to use her story to advocate for those who do not receive the same visibility. The Gabby Petito Foundation continues this mission. Established by her parents, it provides resources for families of missing persons and raises awareness about domestic violence. Through public appearances, interviews, and partnerships, Gabby's family has sought to transform their personal tragedy into a force for good, ensuring that Gabby's name stands for hope and change, not only loss. As for Brian Laundrie, his parents have remained adamant in denying wrongdoing. They have not been criminally charged, though public suspicion continues to shadow them. The contents of Roberta Laundrie's controversial burn after reading letter remain a stark reminder of the murky boundaries between family loyalty and legal responsibility. Though the official investigation has closed, the legacy of Gabby Petito endures, not as a mystery solved neatly, but as a story that reshaped conversations about domestic violence, social media, and the urgency of protecting those most vulnerable. The story of Gabby Petito is not just a crime story. It is a mirror reflecting deeper truths about relationships, community, and how we respond to danger. Her case captured global attention because it combined the familiar with the unthinkable. A young woman chasing her dreams, documenting her journey, and suddenly vanishing in plain sight. It reminded us that behind every smiling photo, there may be struggles we do not see, and that danger can exist even within relationships that appear loving to the outside world. Gabby's family has urged us not to let her story fade into silence. They have asked that we remember her not as a victim defined only by her final moments, but as a vibrant young woman who sought joy in creativity, travel, and human connection. Her legacy, they remind us, can serve as a catalyst for change. One of the lessons from this tragedy is the importance of recognizing signs of unhealthy or controlling behavior in relationships. Gabby's story reveals how moments of tension, sometimes dismissed as minor, can escalate into something far more dangerous. Talking openly about these signs and offering support without judgment could be life-saving for someone in need. Another lesson is the power and responsibility of collective attention. Gabby's disappearance received unprecedented coverage, leading to swift discoveries and mobilization of resources. Yet, thousands of other families wait in silence for news about their missing loved ones. Gabby's case reminds us of the need to extend that same urgency and compassion to all, regardless of race, background, or circumstance. So, the call to action is twofold. First, let Gabby's story encourage us to look closely at the relationships in our lives and the lives of those around us. If you see someone struggling, isolated, or diminished by a partner, speak up, offer support, and help them find resources. Second, let us broaden our awareness. When a person goes missing, every case deserves attention, every family deserves answers, and every life deserves dignity. Gabby Petito's journey began as a dream to see the beauty of the world. Though her story ended in heartbreak, the impact continues. By honoring her memory with action, compassion, vigilance, and advocacy, we ensure her light does not fade. What's your perspective? What lessons do you take from Gabby's story, and how can we, together, make sure no other family has to endure what hers has endured?